Well, hello, and welcome to another episode of You and Me and Multiple Sclerosis. My name is Pam, and I can honestly say I have been living with MS for 37 years, because today marks 37 years to the day that I had my first MS symptom that is recognizably an MS symptom. The very first day that I had it was January 5th, 1985, and I know this because it was 2 days after I turned 25 years old. Well, as I got to thinking about my 37 years with MS, I realized that it almost recapitulates the history of MS treatment over time, because I've been around for, not the beginning exactly, but pretty close to the beginning of modern multiple sclerosis treatment. So this thing called MS, what does it stand for? Well, everybody knows, right? It's multiple sclerosis, and it's some kind of horrible brain disease or whatever. But over time, MS, it stood for more different things for me than just multiple sclerosis. And I thought I'd just kind of step through a few of those. Well, number one, and I know you can all relate to this, the first thing is MS stands for mysterious symptoms. So that day, 2 days after my 25th birthday, I woke up after having been feeling perfectly normal. I woke up and immediately realized that my left eye felt like somehow I had pulled a muscle in it. And I don't know how to describe it other than that, but that's what it felt like. There was this pain. And if I looked in certain directions, it hurt. So I thought, how can you pull a muscle in your eye? I never heard of such a thing. But anyway, I thought, okay, oh well. And I started to go about my life, and I don't know how many days passed, not very many. I realized that the center of my field of vision in that eye was getting kind of gray, like I couldn't really see clearly. Well, then the spot got bigger and bigger. And I ended up going to, well, you might logically assume you go to the eye doctor, right? Because if it's an eye problem, that's where you go. And the eye doctor was very nice. He gave me all kinds of vision tests, color tests, and then he seemed to be rather uncomfortable. He told me that there were several things that might be the reason that I had this happening. And he talked about B12 deficiency. He talked about alcohol abuse, which clearly was not the case for me. And then, very reluctantly, he mentioned multiple sclerosis. But then he was quick to pounce on that and say, but no, I don't want you going to thinking that, because it's probably not that. The chances are good it's not that, so I wouldn't worry about it. The prednisone that he prescribed for me cleared it up eventually, but it did take quite a while. And it just sort of faded back to being the way it had been before, and I went on and I thought everything was fine. But then it happened again in another, I don't know, a little over a year. This time it was in the right eye, but there was no pain. But every time they'd give me a course of steroids and I would get better, and that would be in the other eye, and then it would be back in the other. Never two at the same time, but it was mysterious because even though I kept going back to the eye doctor, they never really could give me anything more definitive about why it was happening or why it kept recurring or what was causing it. So that was a little frustrating. But optic neuritis wasn't the only symptom that I had in those early years that was mysterious and no one could explain. For one thing, I remember I lost my sense of taste. And this went on for a few weeks. Nothing tasted right, except for one thing, potato pancakes, which is weird. But everything else tasted like metal or blood or worse. So not a diet to be recommended, but it went away one day. No one ever could figure that one out. And then also, there were a couple of times in the first few years where I would have just a day or two where I couldn't even move my head without becoming really nauseated. Like I had to just pretty much lay on the sofa all day long, and that just was weird. I couldn't understand what was going on. I didn't have a cold, a flu, nothing. A day or two later, I'd wake up and I'd be fine. Could anyone explain that one? No. But as we look back on it now, we pretty much can figure that that was all just little signs that MS was on its way. And I think probably for most of you, whether it's optic neuritis or you wake up with numbness in your arm or your leg, some kind of weakness that you didn't have before, whatever, the first symptom that you have just seems like it came out of left field. And usually if you go to a doctor about it, they don't immediately assume you have MS. And I think that even though today things are different than they were back in 1985, that still would probably be the case. Maybe optic neuritis, they would suspect MS, but many things have other reasons, other causes, so they wouldn't necessarily jump on that. Well, the next thing that MS has stood for in my life, you could either call it the medical shuffle or misleading quote-unquote solutions. So I was having optic neuritis for years, and after about the third or fourth time, I was sent up to Seattle to Virginia Mason Hospital, which is a really, really good hospital. And they were very excited because they had just recently got a new machine called an MRI. And I know we're all very familiar with that now, but in those days, that was brand new. So I was put into the MRI tube. That was my first experience in an MRI. Took quite a long time, by the way. And they looked at the images, and then they got me back in to meet with them about it. And they said to me, well, we can see that the optic chiasm, which is the place where your optic nerves cross, is all inflamed. But quite honestly, we don't know what that means. You see, the problem was that the MRI was so new that there were no images to compare. They didn't even know what they were looking at. And as far as understanding, about white spots and other kinds of problems that we now are all too familiar with when we look at MRI scans, back then it was all brand new. So I was really kind of a guinea pig almost. My images might be somewhere in some museum. I don't know. But so it really wasn't helpful. They could see that something was going on, but they had no idea what it was. So once again, I was kind of shuffled off and told, well, it could be this and it could be this, but don't worry a lot about it. That kind of left me with not much to go on. So once they finally decided that I had MS, there was still kind of a consternation about, well, what can we even really do about this? Because there were not many disease-modifying therapies back then. There were basically 3 disease-modifying therapies on the market: Avonex, Betaseron, and Copaxone. And no one really seemed to know which one would be the better one to try, so they just let me try whatever one I wanted. And over time, new medicines have come on the market, but immediately followed by anecdotal stories or scientific studies about side effects that were pretty nasty. So I wasn't really sure whether I should stay on the same thing or go on something different or whatever. At least on Copaxone, I felt like I was pretty safe there because there really haven't been a lot of stories about Copaxone causing trouble for people. But in the meantime, there were all these misleading quote-unquote solutions and people that claimed that MS was caused by this and we can fix it by doing that. An Italian physician had cured his wife's MS by doing surgery on her neck that apparently her veins in her neck were like spaghetti or something. And so they had this great idea that this was a vascular insufficiency problem and that this is the way to fix it. Well, a lot of us got pretty excited about that. I even went to Albany, New York, and I had them do a test on me, like an imaging, to see if my veins were all full of spaghetti, whatever. I mean, now when you think about it, it's kind of crazy. But we all really were hopeful that that was going to do some good. And it turned out, no, not really. So over time, you're living with multiple sclerosis, and MS starts to stand for something else: mood swings. In my case, it stood specifically for mad and scary, because that's the form that my mood swings would take. One minute I would be sitting there fine and even happy, and the next minute I'd be spitting mad like a cat that somebody had thrown a bucket of water on. When you've lived with MS for many, many years, eventually you become wistful, perhaps, that someday there will be a cure, but you just don't know. You resign yourself to a life with MS, but MS starts to stand for maybe someday. You keep hoping that there's going to be a breakthrough, that there's going to be something that if we could just do this differently, we'd fix this problem. I know that's wishful thinking of the worst kind. It's not how the scientific world works. There's an awful lot of research going on right now. I don't know whether MS will be cured in my lifetime. I kind of doubt it. But I know that things are moving forward. Still, maybe someday is quite often how I would think about my multiple sclerosis. But then eventually you move into a more constructive view towards having MS. And I would say then MS can stand for modified strategies. So you have a way of living, right? You've always done things a certain way, or you're frustrated because now your MS has prevented you from doing things that you used to be able to do. If you have a goal, if you have something in your life that you really want to do, don't let multiple sclerosis stop you from doing it. It just means you need to be a little creative and think about how you might go about doing it differently. But I will say that the march of technology has helped me. I know that for my friends, some of the new assistive devices are so much better than they used to be. So much easier to navigate around with, to transport. It's a lot easier to do the things that you want to do. Probably for me, the greatest thing that's happened since I got MS was the invention of the internet. Because so many things that in the past I would have had to physically go places to do, I can now do in the comfort of my own home. I got a graduate degree by sitting at my computer. The whole entire program was online. If I want to buy a book or a box of laundry detergent or whatever, I can get that online. I can fill out forms online. I can sign real estate agreements online. So the internet has helped those of us with disabilities a great deal. Think about the things that you've always wanted to do with your life. What was the thing that you really wanted out of that? Was it the process of doing the thing that you really want, or is it the end result, the product? For example, maybe you always wanted to see the view from the top of the tall mountain that's near your house. Well, was it the process of climbing the mountain that you wanted, or was it the view? There are other ways to achieve the view without having to do all the trudging up the hill. I've always enjoyed getting to wonderful places, to beautiful places, but not necessarily so much the process of getting there. So I can still go places and see things and do things. Well, lastly, let's look again at multiple sclerosis. MS. It means many scars. Maybe there is something kind of fitting about that. I'm reminded of the line in Amazing Grace, "Through many dangers, toils, and snares, I have already come." And one of the things I know MS has done for me, whether it meant to do that or not, is to make me more patient, more compassionate, more understanding, and more willing to depend on other people. In the past, I was a lot more independent. I was a lot more impatient, a lot more type A. But I've learned that human relationships, human friendships, love is the most valuable thing of all. And just because I have MS doesn't mean that I'm deprived of any of that. Every relationship is tested by something. In the case of multiple sclerosis, it is a pretty difficult test, but any relationship that passes that test is strong, and nothing much is going to break it then. So we all know who our friends are when we still have them after we've had MS for a number of years. We can rest assured that these folks really do care about us. So being scarred is not necessarily a bad thing. the term battle scars as a complimentary term, right? A term of praise that the person survived. And so maybe that's kind of in the long run what multiple sclerosis is all about. It's sort of proof that you are a survivor. Those are a few of the things that I thought of when I thought of, well, what does MS actually stand for? I'm sure there are many, many others, and I would love to hear some of the ones that you have come up with to describe how MS has affected you throughout your life. Leave me a comment below. I'd love to hear from you. Well, that's all I have for you today. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you again in my next video.